let's assume our company makes, I don't know, let's make clocks today. All right, and let's say that our current operations, let's see, we've got sales right now of $4,375,000. We've got cost of goods sold of 2.6. So we've got 1,775 for gross profit. Our operating expenses come to $840,000. So we've got net income of $935,000. Okay, so that's our current operations. Let's say that right now we're at 75% capacity. Okay, let's say that, what did I say, we're making clocks? Yeah, it doesn't matter, but anyway. All right, so we're making clocks, and we get a customer that contacts us and says, hey, we'd like to purchase some, but we want to do this and see if you'll give us a special deal, or we want a special order, okay? And so rather than your regular price, we want to pay you something a little different, okay? And if we want to, well, let's figure out what our regular price is, just so we'll know. Let's say that right now we are producing 350,000 units. That would mean that here's our regular sales. All right, $4,375,000 for 350,000 units. So that means that our regular sales price is $12.50 a piece. Okay. Well, let's say that somebody comes in and says, all right, well, instead of the $12.50, we're going to offer you just, a little bit different. How about what if you give them to us for $7.60? So this is the regular price, and this is what we're going to consider our special price. Okay, or they're asking us, would you sell us this at $7.60 a piece? Okay. So we have to consider, would you do this? Well, a lot of people will just say right off the bat, no, I'm not doing that. It's $12.50 is what I charge. Pay what I charge, right? Well, let's wait a minute and consider. Okay? So, all right, $7.60. So we want to do an incremental analysis to figure out, should we accept this special price or this special order that they're offering us? What would be the difference between the two? Okay? Well, right now, here's what we got going on. Okay? Or you could look at it on a per unit basis. But let's just compare if we keep things as they're going, or should we accept the special order. Now, sometimes your differential will have two areas for this. One will say something like accept or reject the offer. Well, the reject column, though, think about it. If you reject the offer, are you going to have any additional income? Or are you going to have any additional costs to consider? Not really, because you wouldn't be accepting the offer. You'd just be doing this, everything. So I generally just look at, okay, what happens if we accept the offer? So let's just run numbers on that, okay? But for a true incremental, we're going to have both. So I'll show you what you see for the incremental, okay? So your revenue or your sales figures. All right, first thing, let's look at sales. Again, I'll put the reject in here. You're going to see that it's going to be pretty easy to figure this out. If we don't accept the offer, are we going to have any additional sales? No. Okay. If we accept the special offer, all right, how much are we going to have in sales from that order, not total for the company? Well, they were going to give us $7.60 a piece, and let's say that the special, we're talking about 15,000 units. Okay? So if we accept that, then 15,000 units, and they're going to give us $7.60 a piece. So that means that we're going to get $114,000 in sales from that order. So your net income increase or decrease, or if you want to say your differential income or incremental income, same thing. That means we're going to get an extra $114,000. Well, so far it's sounding pretty good, right? Okay. But there's some other things to consider. You would get extra money, but would it cost you anything? Well, you've got to make the 15,000, right? This is in addition to the 350,000 units. It's not some of those 350. You already sell them 350 at $12.50 a piece for a total of $43.75, okay, or 4,375,000. So this is extra. So we'd be making 15,000 more units, okay? So we are going to have additional cost. What costs are we going to have? We also want to consider capacity with this. Okay, we've talked about capacity before. Right now we're at 75% capacity. We need to make sure that these additional units won't put me over 100% capacity. If they do, that's going to become important. Remember, what's capacity important for? When we talk about that, we're referring to whether fixed costs are going to be impactful or not. So if we go over 100%, then we're going to have to consider there's going to be additional fixed costs. Those will definitely add into our figures here and make or take part in the decision. If we're at or below 100%, then we don't really need to consider the fixed costs because they're not going to change whether we just make the 350 or we make the additional 15 for the total of the 365. Okay, so at 350,000, if that's equal to 75% capacity, then that means that capacity is, well, it's a strange number, but 100% capacity would be like 466,667 units if you went around it. Okay, when we add in the 15, that gets us to 365. So we're not at 100%. That's what's important. We're at like an average of around not an average, but rounded at about 78%. So you have to know and pay attention to this capacity figure. If this had said, 99%, then we're going to need to take fixed costs into consideration as well. But we don't, okay? So we need to consider the additional costs for this. Well, we're talking about, cost of goods sold. So let's put cost of goods sold up here. Actually, we're really just talking about what part of cost of goods sold. We really just want to pull out the variable cost of goods sold. So let's say that, I'll give you a little split on this. Let's say that the variable part is equal to 70%. And then the fixed is the rest. Okay, sorry, I'm getting a little sloppy on you today. So we really only want to consider the variable because the fixed won't change. If we make 350,000, it'll be whatever it is, $500,000, whatever. If it's the 365, the additional 15 are in there, it'll still be the same amount. So I don't really need to consider the fixed, just the variable. So let's figure out how much my cost of goods sold would be, this cost associated with those 15,000 units. Well, if it's 70% here, then how much is that? I'm going to have to do a little calculation at the bottom. Maybe I'll have enough room. All right, let's look at variable cost of goods sold. All right, 2.6 is the total cost of goods sold, and we just said that 70% of that was variable. All right, so that means $1,820,000 is the variable part of that. Well, that's great, but this is for how many units? How many units are we making at this level? 350,000. Well, I need to have some number that I can relate it to additional units. Okay, so I want a variable cost per unit. Well, if I know that this is $1,820,000 and it's for 350,000 units, then I should be able to get a per unit basis. You should know how to do per unit calculations. Okay, so this means that my variable cost per unit, that should be a point, not a comma, or looks like a 1. Hang on. $5.20. That's my variable cost of goods sold. Okay. Now I can figure out cost of goods sold. And again, if I reject it, I won't have any because I'm not making any extra units. But if I accept those 15,000, then my variable part that I want to consider is $5.20 a piece. So that means that we'd have $78,000 in variable cost of goods sold. Okay. So that's a decrease in net income. That's an additional cost to consider. Now we also need to look up here, and you don't really need to do a gross profit and all that. We're just getting the actual numbers. So what about operating expenses? Anything to consider there? Well, again, if I'm rejecting, I don't have to consider anything because I'm not making the 15,000. So what about if I accept? Well, operating expenses, again, a lot of different things can be in here, but what I'm concerned with is just like when we do variable and absorption costing, anything to deal with contribution margin, I want to look at variable versus fixed again, because the fixed, based on our capacity levels, before and after, if we did this, still not going to be something I need to consider fixed cost for. So again, I need the variable part and I need the fixed part. So let's say that for operating expenses, variable comes to 75% and the fixed is 25%. Okay, so again, I need to do kind of the same thing here. I've got variable operating expenses, and that means we've got $840,000, and 75% of that was variable. Okay, so that means $630,000 is variable operating expenses. Again, how many units is this for? It's for 350,000 units. Okay, so that means that per unit, this comes to $1.80. Okay, now I can relate it to the 15,000. So for 15,000 units at $1.80 a piece, $1.80? Yes, $1.80. Okay, so that means that we're going to have 27,000? Yes, okay. So let me write, because I'm going to forget that when I start talking, but let me give you something else. Let me write 27,000 over here. Circle it in a little box. Woohoo! Okay, that relates into this. So that's how much our variable operating expenses are. But let's consider something else. And you know what? No, I'm going to write it here. I'm going to give you a separate line. Let's consider, because a lot of times with these special sales or special orders, they would not be something for your regular market. So let's say that you're a company and you mainly do U.S. sales. Let's say that this was an international sale. So it's not going to affect your current market, because if you sold this to, let's say you accepted a special offer in at one particular store, and I don't know, let's say that you gave this to Target, but there were, 6 other stores that purchased your products and sold them, and they were all very competitively priced because it's the same thing just in different stores. Well, if you gave one a special offer, well, they're going to have a lower cost of goods to deal with when they look at their pricing, and they could price it a lot different. Well, everybody's going to buy from them, so it would mess up your market scheme. Everybody's going to be mad at you, and so there could be some repercussions. So a lot of times this is only considered in other markets, or maybe if you're mainly domestic, maybe in an international market setting. So a lot of times there might be an additional cost to consider outside of your regular production. So let's say this was that case, and this was something for an international market. So you had some additional, maybe, I don't know, some export duties, some shipping costs, some other things. So let's say that you had, and that would be operating expenses, but let's say you had some additional type of selling expenses. Okay, so we could add it into this 27. I just wanted to give you a separate line item. So let's say you had, I don't know, let's say it was shipping. You had to ship it overseas. So some additional shipping, let's say it was $3,000. Again, you could just put it all in operating expenses and put $30,000 there. It doesn't matter, but I like to separate it out. Okay, so again, these are additional costs over here. 27 and the 3. Okay, so there's all of my costs to consider. Again, if I reject, we have nothing to worry about because you didn't make anything else. Okay, if we accept, now again, these are, and I can put this here too, these are costs, so these are going to decrease. Okay, decrease from this at least, but it is an additional. If you reject, you don't have anything. If you accept, you have an additional. So sometimes these confuse people, sometimes they don't, but I just want to make sure you know this number and these numbers are doing different things. Okay, overall here, you're still positive. You still come out with $6,000. And again, same thing here, because we have nothing in the reject column. So, would this be profitable for your company? Should you accept the special offer? Well, yeah, you're going to make $6,000 off of it. So, seems like a good deal.